Just your mic.
My mic. All right, look at that. My understanding is Vice Chair Soon is not able to attend either. I do want to welcome Dave Moore, who is the Acting Director of District 3 Caltrans, to join us today at our special meeting of the Transportation Committee meeting. So I'll go ahead and if you'll all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair Joyner, I'd just say that we are so much better in person at the flag.
Absolutely.
Nice to hear you back.
Yeah, good to be back. All right, Lynette, roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Branscombe,
Yes.
Chapman,
Here.
Gog,
Yes.
Early for Guerrero,
Aye. Here.
Jennings, Joyner.
Here.
Lauren.
Here.
Sander absent, Vice Chair Soon absent, Chair Gallardo,
Yes.
and ex officio member Moore. Thank you.
All right, very good. We move on to public communications. Any person wishing to address the committee on any item that is not on our agenda may do so at this time. After 10 minutes of testimony, any additional testimony will be heard at the end of the action items. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Anyone
I
online?
have no speaker forms, Chair.
All right. We'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. We have one item, which is approving the minutes of the December 7th meeting. I'll be abstaining as I was not at that meeting.
So moved.
Motion a second. Roll call, please.
Thanks, Troy Joyner. Actually, since we're in person,
Does
we
not.
can just, oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I will do a roll call vote. Director Branscombe,
Yes.
Chapman,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Early for Guerrero,
Aye.
Jennings.
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Lauren.
Aye.
Sander absent, Vice Chair Soon absent, and Chair Gallardo.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Said I was going to abstain and then I voted yes. All right, we move on to our action item, development of a regional tolling authority and the YOLO 80 corridor improvement project. Kathleen?
Good afternoon. I almost said good morning. It's been quite a day. So as you know, the main action item today is item number 2, as the chair just indicated, the development of a regional tolling authority and the YOLO 80 corridor improvement project. Let's make sure I have this on here. I don't know how to turn this on. Sorry. Thank you.
While they're sorting that out, we will lose a quorum at 2 o'clock. So if we could keep it tight, that would be great.
Perfect. Okay, so my presentation this afternoon is going to cover 3 central topics. First, the main item, which is the governance structure of the proposed Joint Powers Authority for a Regional Tolling Authority. Then we'll talk a bit about the YOLO 80 Corridor Improvement Project and the toll facility application. And then I will turn it over to some remarks from our project partners of Caltrans District 3 and YOLO Transportation District. I want to start by recapping what your staff heard at the discussions at both the December Transportation Committee meeting, the Strategic Planning Committee meeting, and the December board meeting. So there were 2 main topics of discussion, hearty discussion among many of you. The first is really about Caltrans's role in the JPA. So what we heard is sort of a lack of clarity in the staff recommendation and the attached JPA agreement that was included in the December packet on really what Caltrans's voting role would be, and then the logistics of what that would mean. What would Caltrans having a voting role on the JPA mean for that entity and for the region as it moves forward with the decision making? There was also an expression of some concern with having non-elected directors sit on that JPA board and what it means for sort of state agency staff to serve. It's okay. To serve in that role. And overall, a desire for really strong and productive partnerships with Caltrans District 3. I think we all recognize the critical importance they play, particularly when it comes to our highway projects, and are looking to see, a better, more collaborative, more transparent relationship with them, both in the tolling authority and in other projects in your communities. The second sort of main topic was really about the structure of the JPA appointments and how the governance would work. So there's a desire communicated to ensure that there was sufficient local representation to really make sure that the counties and their communities that are directly involved in the toll facilities projects have appropriate representation on the board and can make effective decisions on the use of the toll facilities and sort of the policies that relate most directly to their communities. Also wanted to see greater clarity on how the board grows. What does it mean as new toll facilities are expanded into other counties in the region, and how would the JPA operate under those conditions? Balancing that need for local representation, we heard a desire for regional partnership. We've heard a lot of the cases of what happens in the Bay Area and Southern California on how these sort of competing tolling authorities have to work together, and a real desire for balancing the need for local representation with regional partnership on this approach. And then in particular, we heard at the meeting and in discussions since, particularly with Sacramento Transportation Authority, a desire for some clarity on Sacramento County's representation. My presentation today will cover all of what we heard and hopefully give you some clarity on that regard. Included in the staff report that was provided on Friday is a staff recommendation for a proposed governance structure. We recommend that the Transportation Committee recommend to the board to approve the JPA agreement, which includes option 2A for the options considerations that I'll provide in my presentation and that were included in the attachment with the staff report. What option 2A looks like is 1 at-large voting seat for SACOG, 1 voting seat for Caltrans, and 3 voting seats for each county that has a toll facility. At the time, we had ongoing discussions going on with Sacramento Transportation Authority and how we make sure there's appropriate representation for Sacramento County. I'm able to provide a sort of like hot off the press update for you all on where those discussions are at. And there was an additional attachment that was sent out shortly before this meeting and is included before you that talks about some different options for voting requirements that could be added. So to make sure that the needs that were communicated by Sacramento Transportation Authority are addressed. The second part of the recommendation that's included in the staff report is that the board recommend that YOLO 80 AB 194 application be submitted by this proposed Joint Powers Authority, the Capital Area Regional Tolling Authority, or CARTA. So I want to sort of visualize what the staff recommended governance structure is. So, we have the initial 3 members of SACOG, YOLO, Transportation District, and Caltrans. So SACOG would have 1 voting seat appointed per county and would also have its own 1 at-large voting seat. And then YOLO Transportation District would appoint 2 voting seats, and Caltrans would have 1 voting seat. The JPA agreement includes provisions so that future counties can have 2 voting seats appointed by Sacramento Transportation Authority, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, or El Dorado County Transportation Commission, depending on the applicable county. I want to talk a bit about what that looks like as the system sort of grows. So if we imagine the initial partners of Caltrans with 1 seat, SACOG with 1 seat, it's not showing well here on the slide, but YOLO County having 3 seats, 1 of which is appointed by SACOG, 2 of which are appointed by YOLO County Transportation District. We feel that this initial structure does the best job of having local representation, of providing the necessary local representation, particularly from YOLO County when they are the only toll facility that exists in the region at the time, and sort of like balancing that need with the regional approach from SACOG. In this sort of second scenario that we can imagine how this governance structure would grow, if a facility was added in Sacramento County and Sacramento Transportation Authority chose to become a member of the JPA, then what that would look like is still 1 voting member for Caltrans, still 1 voting member for SACOG, their at-large voting member, still 3 seats from YOLO County, 1 appointed by SACOG, with 3 additional seats from Sacramento County, 1 appointed by SACOG and 2 appointed by Sacramento Transportation Authority. The third scenario I've provided is really the kind of what if all of the counties we sort of anticipate in the long range plan having toll facilities. So same structures we talked about before with the addition of 3 more seats for Placer County, 1 appointed by SACOG, 2 appointed by PCTPA, and for El Dorado County, 1 appointed by SACOG and 2 appointed by EDCTC. So it's complicated, but hopefully this provides some clarity on what the vision in the staff recommendation is for the overall growth of the structure. We also wanted to be clear with you all what other governance options were considered in the development of the staff recommendation. So during discussions with staff and with our partners, there have really been 2 types of options that the region has looked at for a tolling governance. The first is to have SACOG serve as the regional tolling authority, and the second is to create a joint powers authority. some recap of discussions on what it would look like for SACOG to be the regional tolling authority. It would utilize an existing government structure, but it would add sort of significant financial risk and liability for SACOG. And areas with toll facilities would have less influence, given the large nature of SACOG's board and the sort of wide representation that it has. The individual communities that have toll facilities aren't necessarily well represented on the full SACOG board. And there's also the additional consideration that SACOG staff really lack the expertise in project development and delivery that would be needed to advance a tolling authority project. This would be SACOG entering into really a new area of expertise. Looking at the second option of creating a new joint powers authority, this option insulates SACOG and its jurisdictions from financial risks by creating a separate entity to be the tolling authority, and looks at combining the expertise of SACOG and YOLO TD in policy and multimodal planning with the expertise of Caltrans as the owner and operator of the highway system and as the entity among the three of us that does the most project delivery and construction. And it also gives the areas with the toll facilities sort of the sufficient control at the time that decisions that most impact them are made. But one of the significant downsides that was discussed by many directors in December is that this creates a new layer of government on top of the existing agencies that we have in the region. Within option A, there are two sort of sub-options, option 1A and option 1B that were discussed at the December meeting. The first is for SACOG to serve as the permanent authority. SACOG becomes the tolling authority, it remains the tolling authority, and then that entity can be managed by SACOG staff and have a separate name, similar to the way that CVR Safe runs right now. The other option is option 1B, which would be SACOG being the temporary authority. SACOG temporarily receives the tolling authority to keep the YOLO 80 project on schedule while different negotiations go on and the tolling authority is pursued by a different entity in the future. Within the JPA options, there are also 4 sub-options, A through D. The first option, 2A, is what the staff recommendation is. That's what I have shown previously with the structure and the 1 at-large from SACOG, 1 voting seat with Caltrans, 3 per county. There are other options. Option 2B would be for Caltrans to have 2 seats. As we know from their remarks in December, this is Caltrans' preferred option to have 2 voting seats and be sort of an equal partner as compared to the other folks in the JPA. There is a third option that has been in discussion while the staff recommendation is being developed, which is for Sacramento County to receive an extra seat once a significant amount of toll lanes are in construction in Sacramento County, giving it a 4th seat on the JPA board. This option was originally proposed by Sacramento Transportation Authority. They have since moved to other options, namely the voting requirement issue that is attached in the additional attachment that came today, but wanted to be transparent with you all that this option was in discussion and discuss sort of like why it was ruled out and moved away from by the parties involved. Option 2D was presented during the December SACOG board meeting and talks about shifting seats, having a fixed number of total seats on the JPA board, and sort of shifting those seats to different jurisdictions as the facilities are developed to sort of prevent the board from getting large, while also trying to balance the need for 1 seat from each county. I want to note that in all of these potential JPA governance options, all of the option 2A through D, all of those name Sacramento Transportation Authority as the Sacramento member and could include any of the voting requirements that are included in the additional attachment that's been provided to the board. I'm going to pause here a bit to talk about the additional attachment that's been provided here to the board with the voting requirements. So you'll notice this wasn't initially included in your staff report. It was not included in the slides. This is ongoing discussions that have been between SACOG and our partners in the region, and we want to give you a status update on where we are at. So before you, there are 3 options on voting requirements. For members of the public, there is a printout of this attachment over there.
Go real slow on this one because it's.
Yes, brand new information. Yes, I will.
Slow.
Yes. So essentially, if I could communicate what the desire was from Sacramento County was to ensure that a sort of a deeper level of local representation, to ensure that particularly when it comes to excess net toll revenue, which is toll revenue, so right, the tolls generate revenue and they're required to first be spent on operations and maintenance and debt service and all of the other issues that generally are required for the tolling authority. I have more details on this on a later slide. And once you get down to sort of everything above the line, you have what's called excess net toll revenue. State law requires excess net toll revenue to be spent on the corridor. but there is some flexibility if we are fortunate enough to have excess net toll revenue from our toll facilities that it can be spent on other improvements on the corridor. Things like improved transit access or mobility hubs or trails or whatever sort of the desires are for improved transportation movement along those corridors. The desire, as we understand it, is to ensure that the communities whose corridors are directly involved have sufficient say in how those excess net toll revenues are spent. The three options before you provide means by which we could accomplish this request. The first is a JPA supermajority vote for all counties that are in the JPA. So how it would work is when excess net toll revenues come for action to the CARTA, the new JPA's board, in order to be approved, it would require a majority of the directors on the JPA board, as votes do, but it would also require 2 affirmative votes from every county within the JPA at that time. This would ensure that there's sort of a supermajority, greater support for the excess net toll revenue, and that in particular, the county whose community has that toll facility where the excess net toll revenues could be spent is supportive of how they are being spent. Some downsides to this approach are that potentially it gives the ability for future directors to sort of block votes happening on excess net toll revenue, and for directors who are from counties where this corridor isn't to be able to kind of weigh in and have an effect on how excess net toll revenues are spent. That's option 1. All of the counties on the JPA need 2 of their 3 seats to move forward the plan on excess net toll revenue. Option 2 is very similar. So for excess net toll revenue plans to move forward, the majority of the JPA directors would need to vote in the affirmative, but instead of being every county on the JPA, it's just the county or counties whose corridor is applicable for the vote that is happening at the time it comes before the JPA board. So if we imagined an example of option 2, right now we have just the YOLO 80 facility in the region at the moment. So if this were to come to be and the sort of option 1B that's included on your handout were the option that were to move forward, this would mean that in order for a plan to spend excess net toll revenues for the YOLO 80 project to be passed, it would need to be passed by a majority of all the directors on the JPA board, and it would need to be passed by at least 2 of the 3 directors from YOLO County, since that facility is in YOLO County. If we imagine another hypothetical in the future, let's imagine that there is a joint county facility. So let's say hypothetically, there is a toll facility across the top on Interstate 80 that goes from Sacramento County into Placer County in the future. So now we're looking at a corridor and a facility that has 2 counties. What this would mean, option 1B, would be that in order for a plan to be adopted, to say how excess net toll revenues will be spent, it would need a majority of the votes of the total directors on the JPA, and would also need at least 2 of the 3 votes from Sacramento County and at least 2 of the 3 votes for Placer County. So it balances the need to make sure that the communities and the counties who have these toll facilities and who would be the most directly impacted by the use of excess net toll revenue are definitely in the affirmative on how those expenditures are being planned, while also making sure that the toll authority in general retains the ability to be flexible and to promote a regional system and really build something that works for our customer and works for our region, since we know all of these assets are really shared and many of us travel across these county lines.
To the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is all brand new this morning,
Yes.
and you just went through it. And I'd like to think I'm pretty smart, but that's giving me brain cramps trying to follow what you're saying. And these are significant proposals. And Chair, Mr. Chair, did you say earlier that we will lose our quorum at 2?
Correct.
There's no way this is ripe for discussion.
If I could, Director, this element, the voting requirements, is not included in the staff recommendation. We are not asking this committee to take action today on these different voting requirements. We will be asking the full SACOG board to take action on these voting requirements at their meeting next week.
Well,
So
why isn't it being vetted by the Transportation Committee? You're just going to run it by us and No vetting with the transportation
Director
committee.
Branscombe. Look, I understand it's less than ideal, but the timeline is less than ideal. And
Yeah.
so in the sake of transparency, we're trying to give you, here's the status of these negotiations. If you've got feedback today on this, that would be great. We're going to keep on working with our partners to try to get something that will be published on Friday and that you'll vote on next week, right? The whole point of having the Special Transportation Committee today is so we can give you the latest real-time update. But as Kathleen said, staff recommendation, what's in your packet, it's the JPA as written. You are recommending advisory committee to the full board. If you have the ability to give us feedback on this, that's great. If not, we'll keep on working on it and we'll bring you something that we think is well vetted, published Friday to the full board on Thursday. So we're doing the best we can on a very short timeline, but your vote today is the recommendation that's in your packet that you've seen since Friday.
And I'm going to try to keep us focused on those two items. But
I
I
don't,
understand.
I
your
don't see
concern.
how we finish by 2 anyway.
Okay, well, we'll give it a best shot. Yeah.
May I step in? Thank you, Chair. So just so I'm clear, when we look at the two options, the only difference between 1A and 1B in the scenario that you just laid out is that in alternative option 1A, Yolo County would need to vote, 2 of those members would need to vote in order for that tolling revenue to be approved. The difference between those two options, right? Because Yolo isn't on that corridor.
Correct. So just to make sure I'm clarifying for other folks what I think Director Chapman is saying. In the case where there is a future toll facility on Interstate 80 in both Sacramento and Placer counties, if the voting requirement was option 1A, that would mean that you would need 2 of the 3rd votes for Sacramento, 2 of the 3rd votes for Placer, and 2 of the 3rd votes for Yolo, a county that is not directly on that corridor.
In 1B, Yolo would not be required to vote.
That is
That's
correct.
the only difference between these two options.
That is correct.
And alternative 3 is that we could just kick the can down the road and let hopefully the formation of a JPA, that those people figure that out.
Correct.
Yeah. So thank you for, I'm not trying to
Nope.
give me a presentation, but the timeline on this has not been ideal across the board. As the chair of the YTD board, Dr. West is the vice chair, the timing on this has been not one that's been ideal. So thank you for your continued movement on this project. And I know there's more here to come. So thank you.
Wonderful. So just quickly on option 2 of the voting requirements, as Director Chapman indicated, that is to delay this decision to a future time when another member joins the JPA. The pros of this are that the YOLO 80 project is able to continue on its schedule to allow more time for these discussions between the agencies to occur. One of the critical downsides is that it's not entirely clear where the 3 agencies will be at this time, and in particular for potential future members like Sacramento, Placer, and El Dorado, not providing a lot of clarity on what it looks like to join the JPA and what kind of voting structure the JPA will have at the time they're looking to join. I'm going to keep it moving here to get us on our quorum. So I've provided this table of a visual to sort of understand what your staff's, how your staff came to the decision on the staff recommendation. And so on the columns, you see the sort of key elements that we heard from the December meeting. We want a governance structure that limits risk to the YOLO 80 project, that limits risk to SACOG as an organization, that promotes regional partnership and a collective regional system that works best for all of our communities, but that provides appropriate local representation for the communities most directly involved in the toll facility at the time. So in general, we see both the SACOG permanent and SACOG temporary options as having significant risks in at least one, if not multiple of these categories, and not being particularly strong in any of these categories. And between the different options of the JPA, the sense is that the staff recommendation, which has 1 voting seat for Caltrans and balances the need for local representational regional partnership by the growing structure of the board as toll facilities come online. I've included an attachment in the staff report that details staff's thoughts more specifically about each of these options. I'm happy to respond to that during the discussion portion, but I'm going to keep it moving here. So just a quick update for those on the YOLO 80 corridor improvement project. Just as a reminder, this project goes from the Yolo Solano County line through Yolo County and then splits on Interstate 80 and US 50 towards the Sacramento County line. This is the full extent of the project that's included in the draft environmental document, which is out for public comment until Friday. The project managers are really Caltrans District 3 and Yolo Transportation District. SACOG's involvement is really on the partnership of the creation of the tolling authority governance. The project currently has $97 million in committed funds. $86 million is this federal infra funds, which need to be obligated very soon, which is why we're all on this very tight timeline. So part of the staff recommendation is recommendation that this committee recommend to the board that this new Joint Powers Authority be the entity that submits a toll facility application on behalf of this project. I wanted to make this committee and the board aware of roughly what is in this very long, complicated toll facility application. Overall, the application discusses corridor performance and the fact that a toll facility would improve the performance of the corridor by up to 15 minutes in travel time savings in the westbound, up to 69 minutes in travel time saving in the eastbound in the worst cases, and saves about 700 hours of daily truck delay along this corridor. There's also significant regional support for this project. It's one of the mega region dozen. There's demonstrated Caltrans partnership by them being here today and all of these conversations on this project. It's in the adopted Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Sustainable's community strategy and supports local plans and transportation plans. Also, the application needs to demonstrate that the project is feasible, it complies with state laws, it has a complete funding plan, and it has a concept of operations, which is a more detailed engineering document that overall talks about how the toll facility will operate, where the zones will be, where the signs will be, where the tolls will be collected, what are the transit considerations. It also provides a high-level overview of the roles and responsibilities of the tolling authority and the various entities, like what role does FHWA play? What role does California Highway Patrol play in tolling authorities, many of which is common across other toll facility projects, but just to give you a sense of what's in these documents. There's also some operational and technical requirements. Overall, the concept of operations is seeking to provide a future JPA board as much flexibility as possible to structure the tolls according to market demands and what the communities need at that time, but does provide some basic information as required by law on mandated discounts like for clean vehicles, things we see in other regions that have toll facilities. There will be, no doubt, some discussion today on toll revenue and expenditure, in particular as it relates to these voting requirements that are included in this hot off the press attachment for the staff report. So I just want to be clear about what net excess toll revenue is. So if you look at this faucet waterfall slide, so gross toll revenue being the amount of tolls that come in from the facility. So there are various requirements that first come out, include banking fees, toll collection, operations and maintenance, the actual operations and maintenance of the facility itself and what it takes to run them. And then you get to net toll revenue, but even then there's still more line items that need to be taken out for debt service, providing reserve accounts so the toll facility can still run financially, even if significant changes in traffic like a pandemic happen, and also additional capital funds that are needed for toll facility operations. So just want to be clear to this board that in particular, a single lane toll facility isn't expected to generate a ton of excess net toll revenue. I want to be clear about other things that could impact excess net toll revenue, things like toll prices, how much you charge, how many hours of the day you operate the toll, how many days of the week you operate the toll, and how many folks you provide discounts to can of course affect how much toll revenue the toll facility gets. In general, in the state where we see things dramatically change how much revenue and particular excess net toll revenue is generated, things like toll facility length. The longer a toll facility you're providing, the better potential travel times benefit you're providing to travelers who are going long distances. They're able to save a lot of time over a long distance. That's where you start to see more sort of demand for a toll facility service. Similarly, direct connectors that go to other interstates that also have toll facilities is where you start to see an increase in excess net toll revenue, and dual lane facilities also, generally speaking, you tend to see an increase in net toll revenue. Okay, that concludes my remarks today. Before we open it back up to the chair for director discussion, I want to hand it over to Caltrans District 3.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was a lot. So I'll try to be brief, but can you hear me? At the same time, I do have some information to cover.
Maybe
There's
pull
about,
that up a little bit.
Ooh, yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Is that better?
Much.
I'll try to be brief, but there's a lot of information that we could go over depending on the group. But I'm here. I'm grateful to be here in person, to see all of you in person. I just to introduce myself. My name is Brian Alkinsell. I'm the Deputy District Director over Traffic Operations in Caltrans District 3. Today, in partnership with SACOG staff and with YOLO TD, I'm here to present some information to you about our region and why it would be a benefit for Caltrans to be a voting member of the JPA. We took to heart the comments of this committee and also of the board in our last month, and we hope this presentation will clarify some of the reasons why Caltrans District 3 is in a unique position to add value to this proposed JPA. So, well, that's me. There are really three main points that I'll go over. One is just reduced engineering operations and maintenance costs with the added coordination that we can have between the three agencies. Number two is improved efficiency and the required approvals for permits and lane closures. And then also the last one, probably but not least, probably the most important, is more productive and transparent relationships with Caltrans. So I'm going to start with operations because that's my forte. The Transportation Management Center. This is probably one of the biggest key elements that we can provide as a service to the JPA that you would not have to start from scratch to build or to add staff to, because we already have a transportation management center in Rancho Cordova. It's staffed 24/7. We're co-located with CHP. We work very closely with CHP, and those relationships are very helpful, especially with incident management. If you remember, a lot of the congestion, or the majority of the congestion that we experience, is as a result of what we call non-recurring congestion, which is unexpected events like crashes, debris in the roadway, could be snow, could be flooding. The better we are at clearing those incidents, the less time that it takes for us to clear those incidents, the less impact it has to your local roads. So typically what happens if there's a crash or something that stifles up our freeway, the navigation apps will send these folks right onto the local roads, trying to detour around where they're trying to get to. Typically, if we're looking at Yolo 80 as an example, if that's ever closed, people will go all the way. They'll go on 113 to 5, all the way around. They'll go through Covell, Mace. They'll do whatever they can to get to where they need to go. So our job at the TMC, just so you know, the TMC is a communications hub for Caltrans. Everything that's out there in the field is connected to TMC. All of our detection, our CCTV cameras, our weather information systems, and then everything that we communicate back to the traveling public comes out of the TMC. That's our highway advisory radios, our changeable message signs, and even what you see in QuickMap, which is our navigation app ourselves. So all that information comes in and out of there. It flows. It requires the tolling authorities are required to have a transportation management center, and that's so that we can actively manage incidents, and we can also actively monitor the conditions of the managed lanes to make sure that we optimize our performance and maximize revenue generation capabilities. So to give you an example of what other JPAs would pay for this service, if not in combination with us, though that will range. Other regions pay between $250,000 to $600,000 just to start the TMC, and then with an annual cost of about $1 million a year. So having this, I think, would be a very good leverage for you as a JPA to have us on board. The other thing I did mention briefly is with CHP. So CHP, we do have great relationships with them, meet at a quarterly basis with the executive staff there. Very close relationships with all the commanders because we work together. But also we have what's called a freeway service patrol contract, which if we were a voting member of this JPA, we would be able to utilize together. You don't have to come up with a new one. The Freeway Service Patrol, for those of you that may not know what that is, it's a roving tow. So it's very helpful with incident management because they're already actively looking for folks that are disabled and that they can help them get on their way. So the incident management part, there it is. Next is maintenance. So as you know, maintenance is the first line of defense for safety and reliability of our transportation network. And how can we reduce maintenance costs and exposure? That's a good question. How can we reduce maintenance cost and exposure through better coordination? Well, one of the things a tolling authority is required to do is to pay for maintenance costs of their toll facilities. And that includes signs, that includes pavement, that includes communications infrastructure, and must have agreements with Caltrans. Other tolling authorities independently fund the required maintenance and do not leverage Caltrans equipment or plan maintenance of adjacent lanes. Now you can imagine if we're already out there doing routine maintenance, it would cost a lot less to just do it all at once. So that's one thing that we could utilize if we were part of that JPA is our maintenance equipment, our maintenance staff, everything that we're doing, we just have to mobilize once. There'd still be a cost, but it'd be a reduced cost. And the nice thing about that too is imagine if you did have a separate contract with maintenance. Now you have one event, you call two teams out there. That gives them more exposure to, safety of our roadworks is foremost for us. That puts more exposure for those maintenance folks and duplication of work. So I think that's good for that. Okay, so the next one. Sorry, I didn't even.
You're one behind. Yeah.
That was the sorry, that was our maintenance slide. Engineering services. So, in other regions, tolling authorities must contract with consultants for environmental, civil, electrical, and traffic engineering services. And this is to do their projects, design their projects. In addition to the significant cost of the consultants to do that work, the tolling authorities must also pay for what's called oversight, because Caltrans needs to make sure that they are doing things correctly. So this process increases the design cost. It also increases time and delays because of that extra step that you have to do with the oversight. So as a voting member of the JPA, what we can offer is that we could leverage our engineering expertise. You can leverage our electrical, our civil, our traffic engineering expertise, and not only just for the project delivery, but also for check-ins and like understanding of where we are in the project. So you have early communication on where that project is headed. So that's another thing. As a voting member, you'd have that increased collaboration with us because it would be one team. We are using this model right now with the Yolo 80 Managed Lanes project, and it's saving the project and the region significant costs because we're doing all this stuff in-house. The other thing that you'll see, let me see. Okay, and I'll just stress that again, is it would significantly improve our partnership together because we would be involved in this from the get-go. We'd be one team, we'd be moving together at the same pace. But with that, I just want to say, well, I'll do it later. One more thing is, why pay for communication infrastructure when you don't have to? We already have the fiber there. We already have everything connected. Other agencies, other regions, other JPAs, they pay for parallel separate facilities that we already have. So please consider that in your decision that you could use our stuff. We'd be happy to, with our TMC and everything that's connected to it. And then this would be connected also to our toll signs, our readers, and everything else. So again, why pay for that when you don't have to?
We have a quick question, I think.
Oh, sure.
Hi, Director Early. So just to the heart of the matter, at least for me, is 2 seats versus 1. I don't know if you're going to get to that specific
will.
question. Oh, perfect.
Okay. And
I'm looking at the clock.
okay, very good. How am I doing? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that part.
All right. So last but not least, lane closures and encroachment permits, right? So everything, the tolling authorities must submit encroachment permits to Caltrans for Caltrans approval for access to the state highway system because we're the owner and operator of the system. And that's for maintenance and for construction work. It also is needed for lane closures. So imagine this, if we're doing the work, you don't need it. If we're doing the work, you don't need oversight. If we're doing the work, we take care of getting our own lane closures. We take care of getting, we don't need an encroachment permit because we're doing the work. So next, it's also, let's say we do. There are times where you will need to contract out some work. For example, the work needed to maintain and repair the electric toll infrastructure. And that's really important because that's required to take tolls, collect the tolls. We can expedite those reviews because as a voting member of the JPA, we set the priority for our staff. So that's the last thing. And then last but not least, and it's probably the most important that Supervisor Early was mentioning here. In conclusion, I'll just say that these are the things that we already talked about these things. Director Early, sorry. Excuse me.
It's okay. It sounded good.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So just a list of the things that we talked about. We, as a voting member of the JPA, Caltrans will will benefit the following. Number 1, a state-of-the-art TMC. Number 2, an existing FSP contract. Number 3, lower maintenance services and equipment. Number 4, environmental, electrical, civil, and traffic engineering services for designing and constructing projects. Number 5, access to the robust communications network that we have, which includes thousands of field elements including fiber, including CCTV cameras, including changeable message signs, expedited review of lane closures, and encroachment permits. Okay, last one is Caltrans' goal is, and our mission is to provide a safe and reliable transportation network that serves all people and respects the environment. In there you see equity, in there you see climate action, in there you see safety, in there you see economic prosperity through a reliable system. So I just want to say that while Caltrans has not been a part of JPA before, our colleagues in other districts and their partners do struggle with some of these things that we're talking about. Higher costs, duplication of efforts, project delays, misalignment with Caltrans not being at the table. So we are here to tell you we're enthusiastic partners in this, and we'd like to see this tolling system even better than the Bay Area or Southern California. We look forward to the opportunity to work directly with the other CARTA directors and to better understand perspectives of your constituents. And also, I'll just say, we're committed to make this a successful partnership and ensuring the Sacramento region has a more productive relationship with Caltrans in general. We see the staff recommendation as a first step in that direction. And to that point, we support the staff recommendation to form a JPA with Caltrans as a voting member. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good
Okay.
information.
And I
just
do, if I could add
clarify just
few
that part.
points.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So when you say you support the staff recommendation, just because this is an important point, right?
Yep.
You're saying you support having one seat. I want to make sure I'm clear.
We're saying that we see that as a first step in a great collaboration.
You'd be a great politician. That was not a yes or no.
I will clarify that a little bit. So Dave Moore, Interim District Director for District 3. My normal job is I've been the District 2 Director for several years up in Reading to the north, a more rural district. So I'm drinking water from a fire hose, so to speak, getting up to speed on the issues here. I did want to highlight a couple things, and one of it's very much that, yes, our recommendation was for 2 voting members. And there's some additional reasons for that. I mean, I know people are counting the votes. I'm really hopeful that through the stronger engagement of all the partners involved, we don't get to the situation where we have split votes. Granted, it may happen, but hopefully the goal of this group is we're all working together in a common goal and hopefully most of those votes reflect that we've worked together behind the scenes to make sure the right solutions out there to provide the best outcomes for the travelers in the region. As for the 2 votes, part of the reason for that is Caltrans, we like to say we're one Caltrans, and part of that is to combat that we have districts and we have the headquarters. Headquarters is our policy arm, statewide direction, policy direction. The districts actually manage and operate the state highway system out there. So when we look at this partnership, I looked at it as the 2 votes is we bring somebody with that expertise of the maintenance and operations of state highway system to the table for each and every discussion that we have. So we have the better outcomes in the decision making. At the same time, having a person there that really could speak to the policy, the statewide perspective and those kinds of things that is more an expertise in that really comes out of our headquarters office. So that was the original intent. I understand the sensitivity of that and recognize we could get there with 1 or 2 votes. It's a little bit, we may not have the exact expertise at the table at the time. So we're willing to accept that, to still be at the table, to still have that voice in that vote. I will say I sit on and work with different regional transportation agencies, and we have different setups that we have, whether we're ex officio, whether we're a voting member, whether we're a non-voting member. And I will tell you, there is a difference there in being a voting member versus being ex officio. We end up having to be vested in every decision that we vote on to a lot deeper level than we are as an ex officio. Yeah, Grant is an ex officio. We could help influence those decisions. But as a voting member, we have to be vested and bought into that decision. So that's part of the discussion. So that's why I guess I'll say I don't want to say settling, but we're supporting the staff recommendations of the one voting position because that's important to us. The other thing that we've seen just across the state is we do want to have that influence and that discussions on how the expenditure plans and those other things are done, especially addressing the equity in the corridors. We want to ensure that those equity needs are being addressed as projects move forward. And sometimes being on the outside, we're not able to comment and influence some of that. So
So
with
forgive me.
that, we'll
forgive me,
stop talking
yeah,
and
I've
we'll
gotta
open
move
up
us
for any
along.
pertinent questions.
I've got a number of folks who want to speak. Director Branscombe was first.
Thank you. I've got a number of comments. The first of which is there's no way we're going to finish this by 2:00.
Let's find out.
And
I'm trying to change my appointment so I can stay.
that would be wonderful.
Chair Joyner, I
That
just,
would be wonderful.
sorry, Director, I just wanted to sort of point of order. You have 8 members present. You need 6 in order to, so
Okay.
Oh, so we're
it was a
good.
quorum.
We're good then.
Just so you know.
Fabulous. Brian.
Yes, sir.
Brian's a good guy. I like him.
Here
You
it
made a
comes.
pitch and it sounded like you're making an investment. You're making commitments that should have dollar signs next to them. Am I correct?
Which ones are you talking about?
Well, you kept saying, we'll do this and we'll do this and it won't cost you as much. Can you dollarize the value of all of the commitments and value you suggested that you're bringing to the table? Because you say we want a board seat and here's what we're going to give you. You're not going to have to pay for this. This is going to cost you less. This is going to cost you less. How much? That's the kind of thing when someone, I spent 25 years in venture capital business. I've been on 25 boards, 3 public companies. When people come in and make a big investment, they do look for a contract right to a board seat. That's fine and dandy.
Okay.
What is the investment that Caltrans is making? And if we didn't agree, would you do things less quickly? Would you slow things down? I mean, is there an implied concern that things might not go as swimmingly if you're not on the board? First question though, you clearly suggested that you're going to save this tolling authority money. How much?
Okay.
That needs to be dollarized and be very specific to understand the actual value you're bringing to the table.
Okay.
You spoke in very general terms. You need to be specific.
That's a fair question.
And I want to retain my time, but I'd like an answer on that.
No, that's a fair question. I was able to give in the presentation a dollar value of for the TMC because I know that is something definitely we can.
Well, you say here reduced engineering operations and maintenance costs. How much?
Fair enough.
Improved efficiency. How much?
I don't have
Required
those
approvals and permits.
Sir, I
More
don't.
productive and transparent relationships. How?
Okay.
These things need to be very specific, otherwise they can be generalized, and then the folks on the other side of the transaction could end up being disappointed. We don't want to have that kind of relationship.
Can I answer that question with the second question that you had? So number one, we can follow up with costs. We tried to do comparable costs of what other JPAs are paying for those, and we can provide that. But your second question is a very important question too, is would we get any less service? Honestly, I don't think so. I think we would still try to do all we can to help. And
No,
that's,
and I brought that second point up. It's better to wonder what could go wrong. I'm not accusing you of anything. It's
Understood.
just, when you look at a situation and a contractor relationship, you want to understand what could go wrong. And you could, a skeptical reader, and you have to be a skeptic when you look at things to make sure you've examined everything.
fair
A
enough.
skeptical reader of this could think, well, if we don't go along with this, they're going to drag their feet and it's going to cost more. And
That's
I
not our
just want to,
intent.
no, and
Okay.
please, that's not an accusation. It's something that needs to be explored in the best interests of the tolling authority. And so, but the first piece really needs to be nailed down because you made a powerful pitch in terms of, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and it's going to cost you less money. We're going to save you money here. How much? That needs to be nailed down.
You want to share?
It needs to be committed to in contract. It can't be something, well, we think we'll do this. No, it needs to be a contract where you are absolutely committed to the tolling authority to do these things that you say you're bringing to the table in exchange for a seat on the board. Then the other question I have in connection with that is, if you're going to make this big investment, where's your payoff? Are you looking at downstream and excess revenues from the tolling authority and somehow participating in those? I mean, there must be a payoff if you're making an investment.
That's a good question. We would like to be part of the decisions. That's our payoff.
Okay.
I'll add to that a little bit of payoff. I mean, the payoff is the goals of the tolling authority are similar to the goals of Caltrans. So even though it's not a monetary payback, we're not looking for comparing that on a monetary basis. We're really looking at, are we advancing the goals and providing better outcomes for the transportation users out there? And by partnering together, that's what we're gaining out of this. We're going through certain expenditures anyway, and part of the presentation is I want to make sure that we weren't, and why there isn't some dollar values and maybe some other things, is we're trying to sort that out, exactly what that means for us, what exactly we provide, what exactly we can't provide. And I didn't want to overpromise at this table to say, hey, we're giving you all these things. We know the traffic management center costs over time are going to increase as we add a bunch of tolling lanes onto it. We know we're going to be at the table discussing how that's funded, how that's paid for. The initial infrastructure that's in place. And that's a big startup cost. What that costs today, I don't know. We could work on those numbers, but I didn't want to overpromise that.
David, you seem like a good guy. We just met and I did not have the same feeling about your predecessor, District 3. Now, we need to see the numbers if there's going to be this commitment. And we need to understand how things going forward might change. There needs to be a clear understanding. If you're going to make an investment and for that investment, you want a contract right to a board seat, you need to be clear in what you're putting on the table, and you haven't been clear. You've made some wonderful suggestions and they sound attractive. Bless you for that. But it needs to be a firm commitment, and this is the time for our organization to get that commitment. Next, I'd like to move to, can we pull up the slide on the Board of Directors seating with all of those faces across the seat?
Chair, can I just, before you leave this, to answer your question, I'm gonna help you out just a tiny bit. We have an MOU with YTD, and when you talk about some of the commitments you made, I think it would be helpful for my colleague to hear like concretely, and I'd love to hear from Autumn because you can speak to that MOU. Because we do have an agreement. So you actually have a concrete example right now of some of those dollars saved
If I may,
and our arrangement.
I don't want to get sidetracked.
It's actually not a sidetrack. It's to the point.
Well, I believe it's still my time.
How much?
Well,
How much?
The challenge is we also don't want to
Well, I understand,
run
but
to 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
well, I understand that, but I've got a lot to go over, and I think I've got the time, and I'd like to retain my time. Thank you.
You want to answer that?
Quickly.
Can we move to the slide with the people on the board? And forgive me, I didn't mean to blow you off there.
No, it's not. I was trying to actually answer. your
I just
question.
don't want-
I don't.
No, you sounded supportive. Thank you.
Yeah, less support, more just, I like to answer questions.
This one, Director Branscombe?
The one with all the heads across the line.
The last one with the full, with El Dorado and Placer? Or
There you go. No, the next one. Keep going. Keep going. Okay,
14.
back. Here we are. The initial board is 5. Then the suggestion is when some of this tolling happens in Sacramento, you add 3. Nobody wants to have an 8-person board of directors. The risk of a deadlock is too significant. okay? My suggestion is that when this change gets made, you add an even number. You're always gonna have to add an even number to an odd numbered board to make sure you retain an odd numbered board. Again, no board of directors wants to have an even number. No organization wants to have an even number of directors. The risk of a deadlock and slow down on important business is too important. So I would suggest when this happens, that it be 4 and SACOG make another at-large addition to the board. Oh, I apologize. The next point is that Yolo County is a gateway to Sacramento County. This ends right at the border of Sacramento County. And so Yolo County isn't going to, what if Yolo County, with their influence on this, engages in, and again, this is, you look for what could go wrong. This is not an accusation. If I'm in Sacramento County, in fact, if I'm connected to this thing, I don't want one county to have absolute control over something that has a significant impact on my county, that being Sacramento County. I think Sacramento County should be involved initially. It's right next to it. This will have as much impact on Sacramento County as it does Yolo County. I would suggest very strongly that these plus one from SACOG be added initially, and at-large from SACOG be added initially to deal with that. First, you've got the problem of a even numbered board of directors. You don't want that. Nobody wants that. No organization should have that. And the other would be Sacramento County is so impacted by what happens in Yolo County. They should have a seat at the table, particularly since this is a regional asset. And I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chairman.
I need to move on. A number of people wish to speak. Do we want to go back to the committee, or would we like to hear an answer to the question that was previously asked? Please.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I was told I could give some very brief comments after my colleague Brian Elkinsell, and so I will answer the question, and I swear I'm talking like less than 2 minutes here. First of all, I just want to say a lot of people have been working very hard, including many of you, around the clock over the course of the holidays, and I just want to appreciate everybody. I know we ruined a few vacations with this, and so I just really want to thank everyone because this is extremely important for Yolo County, and I think hopefully extremely important for the region as well. So I just want to thank everybody for your partnership. We have made a lot of progress on the Caltrans voting role of 1 seat. We are supportive of that. The benefits that you see here are significant. We have independently vetted this information, which we received from Caltrans through our consultants. I've talked to the folks who run the tolling program at MTC. They have agreed that these are the significant challenges that they face and the significant costs that they face. And if we can get real commitments from Caltrans on these, that is meaningful. To the question regarding how do we get those real commitments, what does that look like? We have also provided that feedback to Caltrans in our conversations. We would like to see something like an MOU or cooperative agreement or language in the JPA agreement itself that codifies some of these benefits. And I don't think I'm surprising anyone at Caltrans by saying that because we've said that privately as well. Director Early did mention we do currently have an MOU with Caltrans with regard to roles and responsibilities on the YOLO 80 project that has guided our work up until this point. So we have an example that has worked well for us on this project to this point of having an MOU with Caltrans that they have delivered on that I think we have all worked together well under the confines of that MOU. And then I do just want to speak briefly to the issues that I know we haven't started talking about yet, but with regard to the concerns that have been raised by Sacramento County. We think all three options that have been presented to you are workable options. I will just say I think it's really important that we don't tie the hands of the future JPA board. This is brand new to all of us. We have a lot of time pressure here. Let's not do something inadvertent because of time pressure that then we can't undo, and it prevents us from getting our work done, or this future board from getting its work done. So that would be that my request is that we not start going above and beyond as far as having supermajority vote requirements. There's a reason we don't have supermajority voting requirements in most cases, right? Because it can be very difficult and it can make it hard to get things done. So that would be my request. And then just lastly, I know you're all aware of the time pressure and the constraints. Again, we apologize for it. We have very little control over the timeline and just appreciate your grace in working with us to move this forward so that we can make this sure that this project actually happens. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, we had, I think all three of you had questions? Nope, we're good? Yeah.
So it goes back to Brian and Dave. So just to put a highlight on the cost, would this be an accurate statement to say that the cost that you've laid out here that you would cover, you would do that in perpetuity as long as the JPA's existence? In other words, in 5 years, you want to come back and say, well, it has to be a reimbursable expense, but that this would be in perpetuity of the JPA. I think that gets to the crux of the money question.
So and Brian, I may have to phone a friend here. So, to answer that,
Let me-
some of that's.
If I could, we just want to, I think, clarify, Director Saragos, that we're understanding your question. I heard it as if Caltrans made these commitments right now when we're talking about the YOLO 80 project in terms of what their voting membership on the JPA would mean, would those benefits like decreased cost and better efficiency and better transparency and partnership carry over to future projects that the JPA might take on as it grows? Would those commitments apply as the toll facility grows? Is that an accurate rephrasing?
I'd say because as the toll facility grows, it will remain on our state highway system, then yes, all those things would
What
apply.
are you saying?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. So yeah, every toll facility that we've been talking about in the LSP, it's on the state highway system. It would be in our best interest to continue wherever it goes, unless it goes off our system, which it won't. So yeah, thank you.
You're right.
Thank you.
All right, good. Yeah.
So I would just offer maybe memorializing exactly that for a 5-year increment periods, I'm sorry. So I would simply offer one alternative to a lot of this might be to memorialize the discussion today relative to our interest based upon a seat or two, whatever we had determined. And then renewable every 5 years so that we do there's a checkpoint along the way to ensure that what we heard today is in fact what's happening and what the needs are.
Okay. Anyone else? Director Desmond.
Thank you. And first, obviously, I'm not the only fly in the ointment, this whole process. Kathleen, first of all, thank you for the presentation, the PowerPoint. It was outstanding. It made it much more digestible to a simple person like me. I do think that the one graph you showed with the suggestion about an additional member from Sac County, I was surprised that was green. It should have been a red bar associated with that option. That's what I would have expected. And that was something I brought up, and it really, I just want to explain myself a little bit. Part of that is because when I think about JPAs philosophically, I think about them more in terms of the House of Representatives versus the US Senate, a proportional membership. And I understand you can accomplish the same things by other means, whether that's a consensus that is built into the operational agreement or other ways. And so I really appreciate staff coming up with these options that you've come up with today. I know I'm not a voting member of this committee, certainly, and number one priority is that this continues moving forward, that nothing we do jeopardizes Yolo County's ability to keep your project on track and moving forward and getting the funds that you need. Obviously, we can't allow any of that to happen. I do think I agree with Autumn on a lot of the points about the two options that you've laid out in terms of voting. I think they're both workable. 1A and 1B are workable. One question I had, I actually like 1B a little more because I think the focus on the counties that are directly impacted, I like that. But one thing I had a question about is why wouldn't we take that same approach with respect to some of the operations and the technical aspects of these, how these lanes are managed?
Sure. So I'll start and then James may jump in here. I think what you've heard from Autumn and what hopefully your staff has been making clear to you is that we want to give the future JPA and its board the maximum flexibility to build a system that works best for the customer, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, toll facilities need to work well for their customers. The policies need to be as uniform as possible. We want our travelers to know what to expect in terms of operating hours and operating days and who gets discounts, who applies. We want to have as much of those consistencies exist across county lines and across different interstates as much as possible. And the reason we want that is because we heard about the tremendous challenges that the Bay Area and Southern California faces because they don't have that. And they have to constantly come to the table and re-agree about, okay, now what do we do that we're seeing increased weekend travel? What do we do about our weekend operating hours? And so we're trying to keep the supermajority quarter by quarter proposal to really the key issue where it matters the most, to be able to give the board the maximum flexibility to have something that works across the region for all of the counties that are participating on the JPA at that time.
And I appreciate, and I understand that response. I anticipated that response. The thing I want to avoid is, for instance, Sacramento County, when we have toll lanes in Sacramento County, and for any county, no one county should be subject to having operations and technical aspects about this imposed upon them without their consent. I understand we have to strike consistency across the infrastructure, obviously. And I do think if we adopted, say 1B in terms of excess revenue and in terms of operations, I mean, I think we could reach that consensus. But I'm also okay if, like Autumn said, it does, there has been a rush to get this accomplished. I do think this JPA, after it's formed, some of these things could be worked out afterwards. And I have a lot of confidence that the members involved would be able to work these things out if we don't resolve everything, today or next week. Is it next week this comes to the full board? Yeah. So, those are my comments, but thank you. Great job. And thank you, Christina and ST and everybody who's been involved in discussions.
And with that, if there are no further comments or questions from the commission,
if I may, please.
quickly.
As quickly as I can, I promise. Before, again, Caltrans has made what, on appearances, without seeing details, appears generous. They're making an investment, or they're saying they're making an investment. That needs to be nailed down. Absolutely nailed down. If you haven't nailed it down, I'm curious why you haven't. Because it needs to be dollarized. It needs to be in a contract with the tolling authority, what have you. Secondly, when adding to the board, you cannot add an odd number. It's when you go odd number plus odd number, you get an even number and you risk a deadlock. No organization wants a risk of a deadlock at its governing board. Third, I'm going as quickly as I can.
Well, I think we're covering the same ground we've already covered.
Okay, well, for emphasis, it's primacy and recency, right?
Understood. It's been emphasized. I'd like to move us along. If anyone else has.
I got one more point.
Quickly, very quickly, please.
Thank you. Sacramento County, this is the entire western flank of Sacramento County in terms of transportation. Primary western flank of the Sacramento County transportation. Sacramento County should have a representation on this board. This is as important to Sacramento County in a different aspect, but very important to Sacramento County as it is to Yolo County. And I would suggest that be the same if something goes to the border of a Placer County or something like that, because it has a direct impact. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Chair Joyner, I'll just note Director Gallardo has her hand raised.
Bill, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I have to tell you, most importantly, thank you, Director Joyner, for taking this on. I know all of our schedules are a little impacted as we try to make this work, and I so appreciate you stepping up and covering. I want to tell you, I'm really feeling hopeful from this conversation. Cards we've been dealt is this timeline is tough. It is, but we all know what we've got to do. We know we need to make it work. And I had a lot of hesitation with the Caltrans piece. I am so pleased to see we're hearing what we need to hear. And basically that we're all here and we're all trying to find a way to make this work. So I feel very confident that I have come around to feeling very confident that Caltrans having a seat at the table makes sense. I also do believe we've got to allow the flexibility we need, and this group will figure it out. We'll get the JPA to work into those details. I understand Director Branscom's concern about the dollars, but there's just no way to do that at this point. It would just be guesswork, quite frankly. But I think the piece that we needed to hear is the commitment that it will be at a savings from what we would pay if we were doing it individually, and that they're there to work with us and for the long term. So thank you again, and great presentation, staff.
Well said, Jill. Thank you. If there are no more questions or comments, would we like to move forward with a motion on the two items that are before us?
Chair Joyner, just a reminder, we do have a.
We do
public
have one
comment.
card. Yes, thank you for that reminder. Dan Allison.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm speaking for myself today, not for any of the organizations that I sometimes represent. So I support the creation of the regional tolling JPA. I support the governance options that have one voting member for Caltrans, not two. I support the inclusion of the Sacramento Transportation Authority as the Sacramento County agency, and I think there are still a lot of questions to be answered about that. But many of those questions could wait a little while. A JPA is not set in concrete. If it turns out that it's not workable, the structure can be changed. I support tolling because it's user pays concept, and I think that's what we need to move towards for all of our freeways. They are incredibly expensive, and we need to figure out a way to pay for them, and user pays is the best. I think we can delay talking about excess revenues because I don't believe there's going to be any for a while. And there may never be a lot, but certainly not in the short term. I'm glad that HOV lanes are not really on the table because they don't work. Everybody cheats on them. And I'll finally say that my support for the tolling JPA does not indicate that I support the expansion of the YOLO segment. But if lanes are added, they should be tolled. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Allison. All right, bring it back up here. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion, but before I make the motion, I just have a comment that I just wanted to bring it back that we are regional advocates and we are doing our due diligence, and I am proud to be here with you. So I'd like to move the staff recommendation to approve the Joint Powers Authority Agreement with the YOLO TD and California Department of Transportation establishing CARTA and consent to CARTA's submission to toll facility application for the for the Cal Transportation Committee for YOLO 80 pursuant to Assembly Bill AB 194. Thank you.
Early seconds.
Roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Branscom,
No.
Chapman,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Early,
Aye.
Jennings, Joyner,
Aye.
Lauren,
Aye.
Sander absent, Vice Chair Soon absent, and Chair Gallardo.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, thank you all very much. That concludes our agenda for today. We got you out of here hopefully on time.
You did. I can still make the
Great.
next.
I'm original.
All right, thank you. We're adjourned.
You know, if
And
you
I'm-
did it,
and I'm
if
real
you